Hello, this is video 2 for the video presentation for the older adult PowerPoint. I left off talking about race, ethnicity, culture, social, different things that were helping or hurting my grandmother deal with the generativity versus stagnation, which way she was going to go. Last thing I'll say about that is we'll go with community, social forces. There was a lot against my grandmother when she made the decision to go back to work. Everyone in not only her community, but really the general theme of that time period, and again, we're talking about greatest generation time period, talking about right after that in the 70s and 80s, was that the woman did not work in the workforce. She was supposed to stay home. She was supposed to clean a house. She was supposed to clean the house. And this was very tough for my grandmother. So there was a lot inhibiting her from especially society, telling her to stay at home. She'd been at home for a long period of time, raising 3 children. But as 2 of them were about to go to college, she realized she wanted a better life for them. She wanted the kids to have more money, to be able to, have the right books, and she also wanted to move out of where she was currently living. So she made the conscious choice to fight the social forces or society, and she made the decision to move and to get a job. And both of those were probably 2 of the biggest decisions she's made in her lifetime. Uh, Moving on to oppression, there were 2 things that basically weighed down or oppressed my grandmother. One was weight, and that was the one of the first articles I wrote about for the annotated bibliography. She struggled mightily losing weight, and she didn't know what to do. And before she made the decision to move and to get the job, she was kind of stuck at home by herself without a lot of friends because she was too either she was too shy, or she was too angry, or she was not comfortable with her appearance. And it wasn't until she had this light bulb moment, which she says happened in her mid 40s, where she realized she didn't care, what others thought of her. She didn't care if she wasn't supposed to do this or that. So she overcame her public appearance, and she, like I said, moved and got a job, and also helped with with my mom and my aunt. She made a lot of contributions to them, not so much my uncle, as I already stated. But she made the conscious decision that she wasn't just going to watch Golden Girls all day. She was going to make her mark, and I guess put out the most effort she could. And that meant overcoming not only the weight that she had gained after pregnancy, but also her husband. And I did not realize just, I guess, how stuck in his ways my grandfather was. But he did not really encourage her to work. He saw that as kind of like a slap in the face. He also, instead of letting her help him in his, either at the flea markets or stores or businesses, he basically got no help and ended up failing several different situations. And because of that, they had to move a lot, and they also had no money, as my grandmother describes it. So my grandfather also, I would say, held her back a little bit, and it definitely inhibited her in her struggle to become the woman that she eventually became, because like I said, my grandfather was very much stuck in his ways, and he viewed women in one certain way, and again, he saw it in other people, he got made fun of it. But because my grandmother went back to work, and because she went out there to try and help others, he and she both got a backlash for just trying to put food on the table and trying to, I guess, make a difference. So those are 2 things that oppressed or pushed or hurt my grandmother in the stage of 40 to I think it's 65. And again, there's other, again, I'm looking at the multi-system lens. Like I described before, she was an outsider because of her decisions, either before or after her light bulb moment. Before, she was an outsider because she didn't really go out. She didn't feel comfortable with the people that were around her in Camden and in Pennsauken and other Cinnamints and other areas in southern New Jersey, not known for the wealth and prosperity. She didn't feel comfortable with certain races or ethnicities of people, and she was not afraid to explain just why she was. And I'm not going to comment on it, but it's very disheartening to, I guess, hear what or how certain people raise their children. Uh, this time period, she was able basically to fight for her own. She caused change, especially in the synagogue at Emmanuel. It's in Mount Laurel now. It used to be in Willingboro. She definitely pushed her way into it. She made the sisterhood a much bigger part of the synagogue. She made other forums realize that they need to start lowering prices, or if they didn't want kids to go to other Hebrew schools. So she did a lot there. Family-wise, she basically helped run my mom and aunt's business. First couple years it was in existence. She didn't have to do that. She wasn't necessarily comfortable doing it, but she knew that they needed a lot of help. She also went into the community through, like I said, the Hebrew school and the synagogue, and she was able to do a lot of volunteer work, a lot of, at parks, basically just helping out the little man, because she realized and knew what that felt like. It wasn't until later in life when both my mom and aunt got remarried and were able to give money back to my grandmother, where she was really able to be comfortable and live in a, I guess, a non-pressure situation. But before that, she would go out of her way, because she knew how it felt, to help those who did not have as much as they, maybe would have wanted. But she definitely basically kind of threw the book away when it came to how a woman was supposed to act. And that time period, or really, that's really goes until recently. Women have only, maybe, I don't want to try to be sexist, but it's probably been the last 10, 20 years where major differences have happened with women in the workforce or in communities or things like that. They still don't get the same amount of pay as men do. I think it's 70 or 80 to the dollar. But the point is, she fought against the people that were holding her back and the social forces and social policies in order to create better opportunities for her and her family and her children. Lastly, a different theory. I went with Steinberg's theory of love, and there's three core, thought processes. And unfortunately, I'm going with the commitment, empty love one, which basically explains that people who were married, maybe there was passion, but there isn't any now, and they're only together to basically save face, to stay respectful in the community, to maybe put off appearances. They do trust and care about each other, but it's not the deep, passionate, loving type of relationship that you would expect. They don't discuss the really deeper feelings that people who, I guess, are nervous to talk about. And I imagine one of those topics was weight, that she didn't talk about with my grandfather. If he would have talked to her about that, I would hope and wish it would have made more of a difference. That led to the empty shell type of marriage, where I believe they were in. They stayed together for a long period of time, but was for other reasons than love. More, like I said, appearances, or kind of like you were stuck with each other and you're comfortable with each other, but yet they could go to bed at different times. They didn't share basically everything I just said before. They probably did love each other, but it wasn't passion. It wasn't maybe sincere, and they just basically, because they've been together for so many years, they chose to continue to stay together. I was not aware of that. Again, I didn't know my grandfather that well before he passed. I knew him somewhat as a strict and maybe not the best of people, but I did not realize just how empty the marriage was, and just how many times there could have possibly been a divorce. So that's the Steinberg's love theory of love. It's a triangle, but I was kind of disheartened when I realized just how relevant that theory was to my grandmother and grandfather's situation. Lastly, there's some limitations to Erickson's developmental stages theory, not just stage 7, but all of them. One is that it's hard to test, and one to find meaning in the theories because of how abstract some of the developmental stages are. I'm getting all these from the textbook. Another one from the textbook is social norms that are always changing, and it's hard to kind of test something or write down, theories and development when it could in the future be another thing. And also, some of the book talked about limitations in the development of some of the stages, and how, if maybe a little bit more broader, it could have made a little bit more of a impact. But Erickson's theories are still taught today, and they're one of the biggest parts of the textbook, as I saw. That is the end of, I guess, everything we need to talk about. I realize I'm up against the clock. I really did enjoy this course. I got to learn a lot about the development of, every different type, every stage of, child, adulthood, young adults, emerging adulthood, and I thought emerging adulthood was very, very interesting. This is Richard Wald, and Thank you for having me in your class.